Okay, so you're buying a used cymbal and you want to make sure that it's the right one for you, that it's not a damaged cymbal. So the first most important thing is, of course, you hit this thing with a stick, you've decided you like how it sounds, and now you're really just moving on to a damage assessment. So I have a routine that I do that is not foolproof, but covers a lot of bases and will spot any obvious problems that you want to assess. So it kind of looks like this in fast motion. Okay, so let me break that down into its components. First thing I'm doing is looking at the surface of this cymbal for any obvious radial cracks, because for me that's one of the biggest problems that would cause me to not want this cymbal. And while I'm doing that, I'm also then moving on to inspecting the bell hole. The bell hole, I'm looking for three kinds of damage, and two of them don't concern me too much, but I want to know they exist. So I'm not too concerned when there's a little bit of keyholing. That's kind of common. That happens because the steel stand is harder than the bronze cymbal, and if someone is resting this unprotected without using like a plastic protector or other kind of shielding, it will over time wear down a little line, a little elongation here. For me, that's not a big deal because I do use plastic protectors on all of my cymbal stands. So if I just put this cymbal on a plastic protector, it will not have any further damage, and it's not something that's likely to turn into a crack or a broken cymbal. On the next thing I'm looking for are spider cracks. This is most common on splash cymbals that have been over tightened. What that means is little tiny radial cracks, individual radial cracks that come out that radiate out from the bell hole. As long as they're not interwoven or deep or chipped, I'm not terribly concerned, although it can damage the cymbal. I don't over tighten my splashes, so it's another thing. I'm not too worried about exacerbating that problem. I would be concerned if what I'm seeing are pieces of the bell missing, like chips, cracks that are real deep and moving around like puzzle pieces. That's damage that's permanent and can make the cymbal wobble around, can spread to the rest of the cymbal, shorten its life, can affect the sound, can chatter. So that's definitely something to be looking for there. That would be the worst one. While I'm looking at that, I'm feeling the edge for flea bites, little tiny nicks that might be on the edge. And especially with vintage cymbals, that's very common. Those don't necessarily concern me if they're small enough. But I'm following that up with a pinch test where I'm feeling to see if those little tiny nicks that I might have detected have a crack that's attached to them. If there is a radial edge crack is one of the things that, again, for me, the three things that might be deal breakers on a cymbal are, a radial crack, an edge crack, and a serious bell crack. That's the kind of damage that really affects how the cymbal sounds, its life expectancy, and also its resale value. I know my buddy Trent Davis, the cymbal repairer extraordinaire, would disagree, but to me a cymbal with those kind of cracks is practically worthless in resale. There's some value to buying super cheap cracked cymbals, because a lot of times they will have a lot of character that super cheap, brand new, lesser quality cymbals won't have. But you never know. It can suddenly those cracks can blossom, they can spread, and the cymbal's done. I'm also looking just real quick at the rear surface, again, for any evidence of radial cracks. And then the final thing that I'm doing is just lighting it up enough with my thumb that I can see the surface of the cymbal wobble and oscillate. I'm looking for dead spots. Again, looking for evidence of radial cracks. So and if it sounds good and I don't see any of that stuff, while it's true there could be microscopic damage that I'm not detecting, I'm good taking a chance on a cymbal that meets that that kind of sniff test. So, hey, quick addendum about something I sort of touched on, which was cymbals that have been repaired or cymbals that have been modified, namely drilled. So people drill cymbals for two reasons. They're either trying to do something like this. This is a professionally drilled cymbal to aerate them, to get the sort of trashy, that kind of trashy baritone, quick decay quality, or they're trying to drill for rivets like this, and this is one that prior owner had drilled for rivets. If it's drilled for rivets and it's at least like thumb digit, half inch from the edge, it's probably okay. And it's probably not going to really affect resale if it's been properly drilled for rivets. That's kind of an acceptable thing to do. It may affect resale just a little bit, or diminish the market for it a little bit. If it's been drilled for this kind of thing, if the zanier it is, the less resellable it is. The more professional it looks, the closer you are to you just have to use your own judgment there. And if you love how it sounds, then get it. I would not value a cymbal like that's sort of zany, at anywhere near its regular market value. I'd look at something that's stable but purposefully modified at like maybe 75% of market value for the original cymbal market value, meaning its used market value. That's being a little bit generous. Certainly if you see one that's like 50% market value, that's probably a good deal. When it comes to repairs, there's really two kinds of repairs that you're looking at. One is going to be an edge crack that's been excised, it's been cut away and sanded down smooth. Make sure it's been sanded down smooth. And then the second kind is a radial crack that's been drilled at either end to prevent it from spreading. With that, you want to make sure that of two things. First, that it really truly was drilled at the ends and that it isn't spreading. It's not like they missed where the crack actually ended. And second, that the crack follows a lathing line and doesn't cross lathing lines. Because if it crosses the lathing lines, that stress fracture, that original stress fracture, can very easily just start to spread along one of the lathing lines it crosses. And then you're going to get a big chip in the middle of the cymbal. So again, with those, if you feel like it's stable, you love how it sounds when you play it, then get it, but really it comes down to the valuation. For resale of a used cymbal, I know some people who would really disagree with me about this, but this is how I feel, is that a repaired cymbal, to me, is not worth more than 25% of its regular used market value. So if it had a crack and it got repaired and you're finding it for like 20, if it was a cymbal you normally pay $100 for and it's being sold for $25 or $30, that's probably reasonable. If they're trying to sell it for $80, that's, in my opinion, I would pass on something like that. Because the chances are pretty good that cymbal's gonna, that cymbal's gonna have problems and not gonna have a very long life, and it probably has been affected. Its sound has been affected, so you're not getting what you'd be paying for any close to regular market value. Anyway, off my soapbox. Hopefully that was a helpful addendum. Anyway, if you've got your own opinions about modifications, cymbal repairs, go ahead and drop something in the comments. I'd love to hear from somebody who actually knows something about cymbal repair. Hint, hint, Buddy Trent. But hey, take it easy, and hope you enjoyed the addendum and the original video.